Anyways, first thing, we have a graph.
Brandon didn't get one.
It's not my fault, it's Sean's.
Brandon didn't get one.
Who else didn't get one? Everybody got one? All right. First off, we have a graph. We're supposed to use answers part A through D. Now, I didn't identify what's what. The V, is it f of x or is it g of x? The V is f of x because you saw absolute value. So this guy is f of x. And the curve is g of x because it's a cubic root. Remember how cubic roots look? It's about an old mom looks like, kids. That's why we teach it. Anyways, part A is for what value of x does f of x equal g of x? What two values of x makes these two things equal? 0 and 4.511. That's the gimme question. X equals 0 or x is 4.511 because that's where they intersect. Points of intersection are equality. It gets a little harder on the rest of this. Over what intervals is g of x less than f of x? That means below. I really need to buy colored pencils. But there and there is g of x below the v. And what you're doing is you're describing this in terms of x. This happens when x is less than 0 and when x is greater than 4.511. Now, I'll probably use interval notation on this. I'll write it out. It happens when x is less than 0 or when x is greater than 4.511. As an interval, less than 0 means negative infinity to 0. Greater than 4.511 means 4.511 to what? To infinity. Now C's kind of got it backwards. C is where is F less than G. Well, that's this territory right there, where the V is below the curve. And again, you're answering in terms of X. What X values are you trapped in between? You're literally trapped between 0 and 4.511. I need equal symbols there. It's a less than equal to. That's what it looks like using, good old inequality form. What's it look like as an interval? 0, 4.511. Yeah, that's half of it. Nope. Brackets. Stuck between those two values. And the last one is about being f of x being more. Well, more would be here and here. You kind of almost answered this, but with a different question. The answer is written the same as B is written. Different question, same answer. Because the V is above the curve from negative infinity all the way to 0. And from 4.511 to infinity. So there's interpreting graphs, which is always a fun thing to do. No? Kids don't like graphs. Or fractions. Or the quadratic formula. I know you don't. You're very fortunate that your family is fairly well off and you have a large farming operation you can walk into. Do you thank God for that? You should. But it explains your attitude towards school. 100% explains it. It explains your attitude towards school. All right, 2, write the equation of least degree for the polynomial shown below. The point 2, -8 exists on the graph, and it says plug this in to solve for A. All right, so you got to talk about your zeros. You have a 0 at -2, because that's where you cross the x-axis, by the way. What factor creates that? You need to understand that. These are the factors. X plus 2 creates that 0. You have a 0 at x equals 0. What factor creates a 0 at x equals 0? It's created by x. Because, we think about the cover-up method. it equals 0, right? You have a 0 at 1. What factor creates it? Now, there's something special about that thing. It's a touch. Touch means square. T for twice. It happens at least twice. And your last 0 is at 3. So what's the factor? X minus 3. Now, there's always a leading coefficient. We call it A. So f of x is A times all that junk. And you have to find A. Well, that's what it says. The point 2, it's actually 2 comma negative 8. Typo happened. But the point 2 comma negative 8 exists on the graph. Well, what's the 2 to you? That's the x. And what's the y? Now, I use f of x. F of x is fancy for what? So what am I going to replace it with? What is y? Negative 8 equals A times there's x's. Every x I see is worth what? 2. So 2 plus 2 times the 2. 2 minus 1 squared. 2 minus 3. And you do a little math. 2 plus 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 squared is 1. Still sitting at 8. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 times 8 is negative 8. No? I just did math. 2 plus 2 is 4. It says the point 2 negative 8 exists. All right, Sharon boy. 2 plus 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. What's 2 minus 1? 1. What's 1 squared? Times the 8. Still 8. 3 minus 2 is? Sorry, 2 minus 3 is? Times the 8. There you go. So negative 8 equals negative 8a. What is a? Turned out a was 1. Anyways, I'm not going to write this out. That goes there. And it's done. This is a fat twin. It's a lot longer than the actual test. This is the stuff y'all seem to struggle with on your homework. It's not asking for domain though, so there's that. And I use various different forms of notation. This is f of 3. Now when I was younger than you, because I took Algebra 2 sophomore year, we were taught that, f of f3. So where do I plug a 3 in? F. So I find f of 3. It's 3 3's minus a 5, which creates a what? 3 3's minus 5. All right. Minus 5 is 4. And what you literally did is you figured out that piece. You just work your way out. So you find f of 4 now. 3 4's minus a 5. It's a 7. All right. Any questions on that? I know you guys are going to funk it all up, but it's just function notation. Moving on. G of f of negative 2. Grant, what are you going to plug in where? That's right. So 3 negative 2's minus 5 gives you a what? Negative 11. Arian, now that you know that, where are you going to plug a negative 11 into? She's not even here, is she? No. Let's go with the next closest person. Dylan. Now that you know what this piece is, G or F?
What?
You going to plug it in G or F? Nope. I found f of negative 2. I found that f of negative 2 was negative 11. I'm literally substituting it back in place, and it's telling me to find g of negative 11. So that's 5 negative 11s plus a 3, which is negative 52. What's C telling you to do? That's what it's telling you, f of negative 3 sitting over g of negative 3. And I'm tired of writing these out. So if I plug in a negative 3, I think I have a negative 14. You agree? If I plug in negative 3 into g, I think I have negative 12. Obviously, I don't want to see your answer like that. It's positive. What's it reduced to? 7 over 6. What is D asking us to do? I haven't used those numbers yet, have I? Bummer. F of 2 is 1, isn't it? What's G of 2? It's just 1 plus 13, which is 14. That's so boring. 1 plus 13. F of 2 is 1. What is E asking you to do? Plug in negative 2's and multiply the result. F of negative 2 we did in part B. It was negative 11. G of negative 2 has not been done, but it's not hard to do. It's negative 7. And a negative 11 times negative 7 is? Positive 77. G just looks funny because it has a fraction. G of 3 has been found, I think, hasn't it? No, I haven't found G of 3. But anyways, you do what it tells you to do. You plug a 3 into G, and you'll get an 18. And you divide it by F of 3/5. So I'm going to plug in a 3/5 into F. And I feel like doing this all by hand. 3 times 3/5 is how many fifths? 9/5. 9/5 minus a 5. To add or subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator. 5 is 25/5. 9 minus 25 is 16. It's negative. So unify the bottom together, and then how do you divide by a fraction? Multiply by the reciprocal. So 18 times 5 over negative 16. You could do 18 times 5 if you wanted. Or you could reduce the 18 over 16 to 9/8. Move the negative up high and set it down low. And negative 9 times 5 is negative 45. Or you can do what y'all do and just punch buttons on a calculator and wonder why you know nothing. We're literally robbing your brain of its ability to do stuff. What you doing? Oh, good, that boring section's over. Alright, so this is a lot like the stuff you were asking me on the homework, but it's easier. There's no radical in them. How do you rewrite 4x to the negative first? 4 over x. That would be the very first thing I would do. I would say that is 4 over x. A is f composed of g, which again I like to write like this because that's how I was taught, which means that everywhere I see an x in f, it becomes what? G, which is 3x plus 7. So 4 sitting over x, and x becomes 3x plus 7. Now, that's the easy part. The hard part is talking about its domain. What is the one thing you cannot divide by? 0. It is impossible to do such a feat. You can't even ask why. It just doesn't make sense. So you say 3x plus 7 cannot be 0. 2 steps. Subtract 7 divided by 3. What can x not be? Negative 7/3. Now I will have this written out probably is an interval. That is the only thing I can't be. That means I can be everything less than it, negative infinity to negative 7/3, or I can be everything greater, negative 7/3 to infinity. All right, what's up with the next one? G made of F. So everywhere I see an X in G, what do I replace it with? This is actually way easier. 3 parentheses 4 over X plus 7. What's 3 times 4? This is 12 over X plus 7. And I might have taken this farther. I've got a key for this thing made out. But anyways, what can X not be?
0.
X is not 0. Plain and simple, X is not 0. It's everything but 0. It's all the negative numbers up to 0. And it's all the positive numbers after 0. What you got, Spencer? It must be urgent. You gotta go. You better have to poop.
Huh?
You better have to poop.
No, I just got to do
No, then you can't go.
that.
You can hold a pee. You can hold a pee. I ain't got a piece of paperwork on you that says you may go to the bathroom. You can hold a pee, son. Did you never ride a school bus or anything? Obviously. All right, C is f of x over g of x. State the domain. Now, this matters when you set it up. F of x is 4 over x, and you're going to throw it over g, which is 3x plus 7. There are 2 situations where you can divide by 0. Do you see them? You could divide by 0 here, so you know that x cannot be 0 there. And you could divide by 0 there. We've already figured out what that couldn't be. X could not be negative 7/3. Either one of those numbers cause a division of 0. Either one of them. Now, writing this out as an interval is a little bit harder. You can be everything less than negative 7/3. That talks about everything less. You can be everything between negative 7/3 and 0. So between negative 7/3 and 0. And then you can be everything above 0. 0 to infinity. And D, which would probably be the last I might do another one after that. D is g of x over f of x. So 3x plus 7 sitting over 4 over x. Now we're going to clean this up a lot, but look at it. What can't x be? You know that x cannot be 0. Now, how do you divide by a fraction? Multiply by? So 3x plus 7 times x over 4. I'll just expand that divisor there. You just x both front pieces. That's 3x squared plus 7x over 4. And if you just looked at the end result, you wouldn't realize that, would you? Would you ever realize that x couldn't be 0? I probably use the word, and I shouldn't use this word, but I probably use the word abort. Because had x been 0 at the moment of conception, would that baby have been born? No. The body would have aborted it. It's a flaw.
You have to clean it.
Yeah, the final product's usually cleaned up. But the domain is usually found right at the point of inception. So anyways, what's the interval for this thing? Infinity to 0, 0 to infinity. And I will go over the rest of it tomorrow. I guess, Mr. Spencer, if you really got to pee, you can go pee. Well, a minute. Not much. You're out of here at 9:31. I think 9:31. 9:31. Are you going to Google it?
I might.
Or are you going to be a man? Because girls, you too can be a
No,
man.
it doesn't look that hard.
And boys, you can be a girl.
Because you can find the Z. Doesn't look that hard.
It's not.